Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Fusion Friday. My name is Brian Mongkolpoonsuk, and I am a customer success manager here at KETIV Technologies. So this is the 30th Fusion Friday, guys. So I'm really excited to hit that number. I think it's a really good number: 10, 20, 30, all those clean looking numbers there. For those of you who are new, Fusion Fridays are webinars that we do every other Friday as a part of our AVA or Autodesk Virtual Academy webinars, which is our big brother channel every Thursdays, going over the core Autodesk products like Inventor, AutoCAD, Vault, and things like that. And we're a branch off of that called Fusion Fridays, and we focus specifically on Fusion 360 and the workflows inside of Fusion. Today, we'll be focusing on optimizing sketch constraints inside of Fusion 360. And I think it's really good that we go back to the basics, back to the fundamentals of sketching and the sketch constraints. I don't think we've ever gone over that on our Fusion Fridays. So I think it's really important, and I think you guys are really going to like it. My approach today isn't to show you guys every little sketch constraint. You can find that on maybe the Autodesk channel. They probably have each little button click here and there for how to use each sketch constraint. But my goal today is to show you how to efficiently apply it to your own workflow. And that's how we are going to go about the training today, or the webinar today. If you guys have any questions, please leave it in the GoToWebinar chat room. I'll be answering those at the end. And if you have any questions at the end, I'll be providing my email address as well, so you can send me an email. So why are we doing this presentation? 3 reasons. 1, understand how to effectively use tools. So if you're given a hammer and you need to take a nail out of a wall, you can use the back end of the hammer to pry it out, and then you've taken the nail successfully out without hurting your fingers and things like that. So why did I tell you that? That was because I think if you are given a tool and you don't know how to use it, it's practically worthless. But if you are taught, or at least learn how to use the tool, you can efficiently complete the task you're trying to complete. In this case, I'm going to teach you how to most effectively apply these constraints to your sketches. Second reason is this is a necessary 3D modeling fundamental. So just like drawing the line, this is the second most important thing after drawing a line in the sketching environment, is creating constraints or dimensions onto your lines to define how long they are, if they're going to be parallel or perpendicular or not, and things like that. And lastly, I want to teach you guys how to set up dynamic and predictable models. I say dynamic because models that have customers who have similar but different dimensions to their models, like a bench, for instance. If you want a bench that's 4 feet long as opposed to 8 feet long, you can dynamically quickly change that with your model with the way it's set up. And that's partially of what constraints can allow you to do. Instead of having to draw each line over and over again and creating it from scratch, you can take what you already have and make a quick edit to that with constraints. Number 2 is, and the second part of that is to make your model predictable. 9 times out of 10, you're sharing this with someone else, and you want to be able to have them get the file and be able to easily manipulate or understand how your model works. Like the bench example, if you have a bench that's 4 feet long and you change it to 8 feet long, you would expect the middle part of the bench to be the only thing expanding, and maybe the legs might be expanding as well to provide support and things like that. So a couple of reasons there of why constraints are really important to sketching and modeling in Fusion. So with that said, we have some goals here. I want to show you guys some strategical advantages of constraints. Once again, I'm not going to go over each little constraint, but I will go over the how you can use it to your benefit. Don't worry about the picture on the right there. It's not fully defined, but I want to show you that example of just it shows some constraints in there that we will be using today. Second goal, I want you guys to understand how constraints are automatically created in Fusion as well as when it's being removed. So sometimes when you apply a particular feature, which we will get into, the constraints that you applied get automatically removed, and that might be dangerous for some sketches in particular. You can delete it manually, but sometimes it deletes automatically, and we'll get a little bit into that as well. And the third goal is to set up a predictable, once again, predictable parametrically controlled model. So we'll dive a little bit into parameters. I know I've covered this once or twice in the past, but I think it's really important and really powerful tool to use to in addition to your constraints here. So once again, a reminder to add those comments or questions into the GoToMeeting chat room there. All right, I'm going to hold Alt and hit Tab to go onto the Fusion 360 page. Let's focus on this one first. So we will be doing I like to use examples for every webinar that we do here, so you can relate to at least something that we're showing. So in this example, if you couldn't tell, it's a phone stand that I've 3D printed in the past, and it's something that I designed first off by drawing a profile of the side and then extruding it. And I'm going to drag this design history down below here so you can see what it originally looked like in the beginning. And we're going to do that same this profile right over here today. So let's go ahead and create a new design from scratch. I'll go ahead and start with the line tool and choose a plane to create this sketch on. So first and foremost, it's best habits to try to draw about the in respect to the origin. By doing this, you allow yourself to take advantage of all the planes and edges and axes that the origin has. And not only that, you allow yourself to fully define the sketch that you create, so then it doesn't move later down the line when you're making changes and things like that. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So also, right before I get started, I like to create sketches and models with this 1, 2, 3 rule. 1, you're going to want to draw the model first with the line tools and things like that. Then 2, you're going to create constraints. Then you don't have to follow these rules, but they're really good rules to abide by if you want the least amount of errors to appear later down the line. And number 3, after those constraints are created, you can go ahead and add dimensions to your model or to your sketch. And let's go ahead and follow those 3 steps here. I'm going to start my phone stand here, starting from the bottom right-hand corner of this profile and moving left. So let's go ahead and start my first point here at the origin. And then I'll move left here, and I'll talk about how there's some automatically created constraints and things going on in the background. So let me go ahead and create that profile first. I'm doing it a little bit sloppy on purpose so I can talk about a few things here. But this is roughly what someone would do if they wanted to start their phone stand design. And this is what you can do for your particular model as well. Just draw a rough sketch of it. And now we can go into constraints. But before we do that, I want to talk about what was automatically created when I created this sketch here. So first off, this line is black because it's fully defined about the origin in terms of what plane it's on, except what's still underdefined is the distance of this line or the length of this line. So that's why I'm able to move it around, but I'm not able to move this in the Y directions. And also, when I created this line, it gave me this horizontal constraint. Now, this can be found here in the horizontal vertical under constraints here. And what this means is that no matter what I do, since I have this constraint here, I can't move it or I can't angle this line 90 degrees, or I can't angle it 45 degrees. It has to be 0 degrees because I've already created it here. So for example, if I draw a line out here and I angle it to about 0 degrees, it's going to snap to 0 degrees. Even if I'm at like 1 degrees or 179 degrees, it won't. It's going to try to snap to 180 degrees or 0 degrees here. And when I click, it's going to give me that automatically created constraint. Same with the vertical constraint. So if I draw a line vertically, and let me go away from this line here, it's interfering with it a little bit. If I draw a line vertically from scratch, you can see that there is a similar looking symbol, but this is the vertical constraint. So if I get close to 90 degrees, it's going to snap to 90 because 0 and 90 are the most commonly drawn lines inside of the sketching environment. So if I go ahead and click that, it created an automatic constraint for me. And if I don't want that constraint, I can go ahead and select on it and hit delete. And now I can move it, not 90, I can move it at other different angles. Other automatically created constraints are coincident constraints. So if you look here, if I hover over my mouse over the origin here, you can see that there's this little ghost looking symbol that pops up. And this is the same symbol as the one found over here on the right in the sketch palette. And this is the coincident constraint. And what this is signifying is that the first point of my line is coincident or touching the same point as the origin. And I have one over here as well. It's hidden. You just got to hover over the point to show it. Hover over that point to show it. It's pretty much in every single corner that I have here except this one because it's not really coincident with anything. But the purpose of Fusion hiding it from us is so we aren't cluttered with so many different coincident constraints since it's so common. So what you can do if you don't want a coincident constraint there, you can hit the delete button again. It gets not coincident. So now this line is, I can pull it apart from that line. But in reality, we really want those to be connected. So if you want to put those put a constraint back together for them, you can manually do it by going over here to constraints, hit coincident, and then select those 2 points to merge them back together. So now we can move them in unison like that. All right. And lastly, I'm not going to go over each one, but I'm going to go over about 3 of them here. There's the perpendicular constraint. So when I created a line that was on the off of this line right here, I was given the option to create a perpendicular constraint automatically. And that's indicated by that blue square at the corner of this line that I'm creating and the existing line there, that blue square. And that's essentially what happened. That's essentially what happened over here is that there was a perpendicular constraint created. So no matter what, this line is going to be perpendicular to this one right there. All right, so those are a lot of automatically created constraints to keep in mind when modeling. And so if you're wondering why you can't move a line a particular way and why it's behaving that way, you got to pay attention to the details, pay attention to the constraints that have been created. All right, so now we are going to follow the second step of the 3 steps. The first step was draw the line roughly or draw the sketch. The second step is creating constraints. So let's go ahead and use this constraint library here to apply it to our sketch. So first, I'm going to look at this line right here. This is the first one that's still able to move around. And I'm going to apply a horizontal vertical constraint because this one looks like it's going to be come out to a vertical constraint. So I can go ahead and assume that if I use this constraint on this line, it's going to make it vertical for me. Now, I can't assume the same thing for this line because if I click on it, it's going to either make it 90 degrees or 0 degrees. It's not going to make it 45 degrees. It's not going to make it 20 degrees. It's going to try to do 0 or 90, no in-betweens. So instead, I'm going to create a dimension. So I'm hopping over the step a little bit here, but what else can you do in this regard? There's other ways to approach it, but this is probably the best way, is by creating a dimension to define it or to constrain it. And the way I got to the dimension tool, I skipped ahead a little bit there, is I hit D on my keyboard, selected the first line, selected the second line, and now I'm going to specify about 20 degrees of a angle for this line to be angled at in respect to this vertical line. So now we have this line that pretty much can only move in distance, which we can clarify by dimensioning later. And the last thing we have to worry about is perhaps this corner right here. We are able to still move this point around, and it can be an acute, it can be obtuse. We want to make sure this is perpendicular as well for our phone to rest on this phone stand. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the perpendicular constraint and manually apply that to these two lines there. So now I know this is 90 degrees and perpendicular. I know this one is as well. So now we can go ahead and dimension our parts. So I'm going to go ahead and hit D on my keyboard and just start adding some values to define this sketch by. And notice how it's starting to turn black. That's because it's becoming fully defined. And since it's fully defined, now I shouldn't be able to move any of these points or any of these lines anywhere because they're all black. And now if I change a value, for instance, it was a little bit laggy there, but I changed it from 5 to 6, and now this increased in height, and it's behaving predictably, or the way I would expect it to behave, and it wouldn't destroy the rest of my model after I changed the dimension there, because these are properly and fully defined. Now we have this nice profile, or we don't have a profile yet, but we do have a 2D sketch of this. But now we want to make a closed profile for us to extrude to become 3D. And a way we can do that is by using the offset tool. And offset you can access by hitting O on your keyboard. I'm going to select those two profiles there, and then I'll go ahead and offset that about 1/4 of an inch. It's not a profile yet because it has to be that murky yellow color. So I'll go ahead and close it off where I see that there's still some openings from this offset. And now we get that profile that's ready to extrude to become 3D. Now, before we do that, let's take a look at what our final outcome is supposed to look like. So let me drag this over here. And notice how there are circles and things like that, but notice how there are fillets all over the place on this model. Now we're going to want to create fillets too on this model. And now the question is, do you want to do this in the 2D environment, or do you want to do this in the 3D environment? And this is really based off the situation that you're in. I find most of the time that creating a 3D fillet is better than a 2D fillet. And I'll show you why in just a second here. Because when I create a 2D fillet, sometimes it will remove a constraint that I have on my model. So if I go under sketch here, there's my 2D fillet. If I go under modify, there's the 3D fillet. But yeah, under the sketch, under the 2D fillet, if I select these two lines, for example, and I enter in a value of 50 thousandths, notice how this warning comes up saying constraints and or dimensions were removed during this operation. Everything seems fine still. It's still black and it's still fully defined, it looks like. But what if I wanted to add fillets to maybe the bottom of this corner? Then it might, I'm going to right click, hold, and release in the north and 12 clock here. and to repeat the same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe add a 100,000ths of an inch fillet. And now we're getting into some trouble. This issue or this warning appeared again, but you can see that parts of my model are becoming underdefined, or this blue color. And notice how now I can move it around. If I change this dimension, it might, yep, there it is. It might make it look a little bit winky. So what we don't want to do in this case is create the fillets to remove the constraints where we actually need them. So what I would recommend is actually to extrude this model first, and then we'll go ahead and create those 3D constraints. Now, before I do that, I did want to mention that there are, from the last release or 2 releases ago for Fusion, we do now have keyboard shortcuts, so customizable keyboard shortcuts. So in the beginning, this fillet, this 2D fillet, did not have any keyboard shortcuts associated with it. Now I've created my own. So if I hit Shift F, I didn't have to go digging through my sketch. I can now access and do the 2D fillet just by using keyboard shortcuts. So definitely play around with that, guys. To access it, you would go to the 3 dots here and hit change keyboard shortcuts, and you can apply your own custom ones there. So just a little side note, I think that's worth noting for Fusion 360, especially if you haven't used it in a few months. That's what came out recently for Fusion. So now I'm going to go ahead and use my other hotkey, E, an existing one, E for extrude, and we'll go ahead and extrude the phone stand out. And now we can apply our fillets. So we don't want to use the 2D one because that one won't work anymore. But we will go over here to modify, and I can use the regular fillet. And I can maybe fillet these 2 features there if I wanted to. Also, what I've been venturing into is the rule fillet. And this allows you to fillet anything within whatever I highlight. So if you see it, there's a little preview here that's showing that it's actually filleting every single sharp edge. And looks like I might have it off the screen here. But essentially, I'm able to choose whether which faces I want to fillet, and any edge associated with those faces. In this case, I highlighted all the faces. Any edges associated with them are going to be filleted to a particular defined radius here. So I'll go ahead and fillet that. So now, if I go back to my sketch, you can see that these are very sharp edges. But if I go back out here, you can see that my fillets were easily and quickly created without sacrificing the integrity of my constraint model there. So I'm not saying that this is the way you should do it every time. There's still a reason why we have 2D fillets, but in this case in particular, it's probably easier to create the 3D fillets like this. Also, before we move forward, I want to talk about a little bit about parameters. I think it's really important because it's really powerful. So let me go ahead and position this so you guys can see that. So parameters are variables that drive your model, and we haven't created one today yet, but actually we did, just by creating sketches and extrusions and creating features and just modeling in general. We subconsciously created it here in our parameters window. And you can see that this was the angle. So I can go ahead and label this angle in which the phone case would sit on the phone stand. This was the base, for instance. This was the height of the model, and this was the fillet. So it would be 50 thousandths of an inch fillet for that. So the neat thing about parameters, for those of you who don't know, is that you can just on the outside here, change the variables of your model without having to dig through the sketches. So if you're talking to a customer and you're showing them this and they want to see what it will look like with a 30-degree angle, for instance, you can go ahead and adjust that here in the parameters window, and you can see it automatically readjust an update here on the left-hand side. And you could do that for any feature that where you entered in a number, essentially. You can go ahead and change it that way. So I thought this was pretty neat and super easy to use. And yeah, I would really suggest that you guys see if you need to apply this, or you want to apply this to your workflow, or to the way you present to a customer that could be really impactful and powerful. All right, so if you guys have any questions on this example in particular, once again, feel free to leave it in the GoToWebinar chat room. I'm going to go ahead and move to the next example, which is this adjustable leg that we start off with a profile that looks something like this. And the reason why I wanted to bring up this example as well is so I can show you guys what if you are essentially forced to create 2D fillets for example, how you can manipulate a line here and there to make it work out the way you'd imagine it would work. So let's go ahead and start a new design. I'm going to go ahead and use the center rectangular tool here, and I'll create the profile of the adjustable leg there, starting off about the center point of the origin. So now that we have this, it's behaving in the way we would expect it to behave. You can dimension it and give it some. You can make it square and things like that, or make them equal on these edges here. But let's go ahead and go in a little bit deeper and try to make it behave in a way we don't want it to behave, so then we could fix that. So what some people would normally do when they go about this is they would next try to create some fillets. They want to fillet the edges here, and then they would offset that, which makes sense, which everything would seem fine. Like I said, the best way probably to approach this is to create an offset, then extrude it, or dimension it, then extrude it, then create the 3D fillets later. But let's go the 2D path route. Let's see if we can solve this using the 2D fillets and constraints. So what we're going to do next is I'm going to hold Shift and hit F for my 2D fillet hotkey. And then I'm going to apply a fillet to the corner here. And I'll go ahead and apply it to this corner as well. And I'll probably do this around the whole square here. But notice how this one is not associated with this one. If I change this value, it's not going to change the radius on that value. And we probably want to update them all at the same time. So what I would recommend is when you do the first fillet, you can just go ahead and go to the next one and not enter in a value yet. Just keep going around the square here. And then you can enter in a value, and it'll update and link all of them at once. It created this automatic constraint of this equal constraint. If you can see, that's indicated by this symbol there. And it's saying that all of these should be equal going around in respect to this corner here. So if I change this corner in particular, it'll change all of them to 1/2 inch of a radius. All right. So next, we want to test out what's going on here. It's not behaving the way we expected it to behave anymore. And that's because once I created that fillet, it got rid of this constraint that made it associative to the center here. But that's no problem. So here's one of the workarounds I like to do when working with some similar shape like this, is I like to delete those lines that were created with the center rectangle tool. And then I like to bring in my own lines from this center point to that center point, as well as this one to that one. Make them construction lines because they're not really a part of our model. They just help to guide it. And then I'm going to use a midpoint tool to select the midpoint of the origin and the point of the origin to the midpoint of this line here. And once I did that, now as I move my model around, it will behave in respect to this origin, whether it's I haven't defined it to be equal on these edges yet, but I am able to move this around, so whatever I do to it, the center of it will be at the origin there. So that's a workaround I like to use when working with an origin in the middle of a 2D sketch that lost its constraints and things like that. And there's so many different ways you can do it. This is just one of those ways. So now we can go ahead and use the offset tool. And I will offset going inwards, maybe about 100 thousandths. And next, I want to dimension it because I have, I think, all my constraints ready to go. If I move this outer one, it's going to affect the offset as well. So that means I'm going to dimension the outer one as well, because if I dimension the inner one, I'm going to get an error because the inner one is referencing the outer offset. So let's go ahead and enter in values here. And now we have a fully defined sketch that looks like it's ready to be extruded. So now we have part of our leg created. And I do want to do one more step to show another type of constraint that you might not really consider a constraint, maybe a feature. And that's going to be the rectangular pattern tool, and we're going to use that for these extruded cut circles here. And I want to show you how I would go about setting this up. So since we could draw on faces on faces inside of Fusion, I will go ahead and start a new sketch on this face right there. Since we're working about the origin and since in the center, I can safely assume this is the midpoint of my model. And I will enter in a value of maybe ½ an inch. And I know this is going to be the next center point of my circles. And I'm going to go ahead and make this a construction line as well. I'll create a ½ inch circle there. And then I will go ahead and use the rectangular pattern tool, which is found under the sketch palette here. And this is, there's a 2D one, just like the 2D fillet, there's a 2D rectangular pattern tool, as well as a 3D rectangular pattern tool. Just something to keep in mind if you're wondering why it's not working in the other environment here. And now I'm going to go ahead and drag out my rectangular patterns here. And it looks like my window is still off the screen. Let's see if I can fix that over here. I'm going to go under File, View, and maybe I can show my, or I could reset default laying setouts to see if I could prompt that rectangular pattern to come back. But if not, I can instead of using that window, it might be stuck on a different screen here. I can set this to 9, and I can actually set this to 1. I do want to show you guys how to bring it back, though. I think that's happened to me a few times before, and it might have has happened to you guys. But it's definitely something that that you could bring back into the screen here. Let's see if we can try one more time to bring that back. Oh, there it is. Don't really have a good reason why that came back for you guys. Sorry about that, but I was able to, if you guys aren't familiar with the rectangular pattern tool, once you create it, it doesn't appear down below here in the design history. Rather, it looks like a constraint that appears here on your sketch or on your model. So we'll go ahead and double click on that. And what we can actually do is, instead of having it be a distance type, we can have this be spacing. So whenever I change the quantity of this to maybe 6, for example, it could reduce down to about there. So I don't have to have the entire length of the model. And this is something we can edit parametrically as well, where I can change the number of holes that exist in my adjustable leg without having to dig into the rectangular pattern tool that's inside of the sketch. And once you have that ready to go, we'll just go ahead and select these profiles here. We can extrude it a particular distance, or we can extrude it to a particular object. So then if the thickness of this changes, then this will adjust accordingly. So there we have it. We have a parametrically editable leg that was created using my own manual constraints there in the sketching environment. All right, so to conclude, I just want to remind you guys of the draw, constraint, dimension technique that I like to use. So first, draw your sketch roughly of what it's going to look like, create constraints on it to lock it into position, and then dimension it to give it specific values and lengths and things like that, and angles. Number 2 was the 2D and 3D fillets that I like to bring back. That was probably one of the big ones, where the 2D fillets could remove some of your constraints, but you will need to use 2D fillets for not only just rounding corners like that, for probably making arcs and things like that as well. But yeah, definitely use 3D fillets in situations like you just saw today, and even the rule fillet, which will allow you to highlight the entire model. And if you want everything to be filleted, or if you want parts of a face to be filleted, every edge touching what you selected will be filleted from the rule fillet. And also keyboard shortcuts. You wouldn't necessarily use it right away, but over time, once you make it become a habit, that's from what I learned. I didn't use Shift F right away. That wasn't the first initial reaction. But once I got it into a habit and into the swing of things, then I started applying it more and more. Now I think it's a lot more efficient by using that rather than not. So yeah, let's take a look if there's any questions. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and ask that in the chat room. I'll give you guys a few minutes here if you do have any questions for that. And like I said, Fusion Fridays, for those of you who are new, are every other Friday. I've been switching off with Alex for these, so then he can do other things while I'm presenting, and I can do other things while he's presenting Fusion. And all of our past videos have been posted onto our YouTube channel. At least most of them have, and you can go ahead and check it out on there. And we also have a newly updated website, guys, so please go ahead and check that out. We have a lot of different content and a lot of, if you want to learn more about what we do here at KETIV, it's going to be KETIV.com for you there. All right, give you guys a few more seconds here, but it doesn't look like we have any questions. So thank you guys for joining. If you want to leave any comments or email me of what you'd like to see in future topics, please do so. We'd love to create content that is very valuable to you guys. I hope that you guys found this one valuable as well. All right, looks like we do have one question from Paul here. What version of Fusion 360 is in the Product Design Suite Ultimate? So Paul, Product Design Suite Ultimate has Fusion 360 Ultimate. So that actually worked out, the wording there. So Ultimate and Fusion 360 Ultimate. In the future, there is going to be one Fusion 360, and there's a lot about this out there that Autodesk announced. So Fusion 360 Ultimate and Fusion 360 are going to be combined into a just single Fusion 360 entity. If you had Fusion 360 Ultimate before, then you will be given 2 years of free Fusion because the new price for Fusion is going to drop down to $500. And if you had Fusion prior to this new change that's coming up here, then if you continue to stay on the $310 subscription that you're already on, then you can continue to pay that throughout your entire usage of Fusion. But if you get Fusion 360 later, maybe in January or February of next year, then that will be the new price, $500. But just note that Fusion Ultimate and Fusion 360 are combined to one Fusion 360 now. All right. Thank you for the comment or the question, Paul. It doesn't look like we have any other questions that I see. So thank you guys for joining me, and I'll see you guys at the next one.